Thank you guys for coming out to hear about the Aerotropolis concept. Hopefully tonight I'll be able to shed some light on what this concept is and what's going on in Atlanta, especially what's going on around the airport. But before I get into the concept, I want to talk to you about community improvement districts. A community improvement district is a public-private organization, and that is a very important characteristic to understand, that it's a public-private organization. I probably should call it a private-public organization because it's really private using public funds. Community improvement districts came to Georgia back in the mid-'80s. All around the country prior to the mid-'80s, you had a lot of cities that were going through revitalization efforts. And as the leadership in Georgia investigated these revitalization efforts, they discovered this concept called a community improvement district. In some places, like in New York or Chicago or San Francisco, even some parts of Texas, you will see, I was just in DC last week, they call them business improvement districts. But the concept is the same. When it came to Georgia, we sort of put a southern flavor to it. And so instead of calling it a business improvement district, we started calling it community improvement district. When you think about community, it's not so much as, where you live. That's one type of community. But in this particular concept, community could be a residential subdivision. It could be a shopping center. It could be a town or a city or a county in some cases. So when you see the word community in this phrase, community improvement district, think of community at those various levels. As a matter of fact, if you have a piece of paper, draw a circle. When you draw that circle, I want you to draw two lines through that circle, creating thirds. So I want you to create thirds. So draw two lines through the circle. So you will have three sections to that to the circle. In the first top portion of that circle, in the first third, I want you to write the word prosperity, prospering. I changed the word that quickly, prospering. So I want you in the middle third, I want you to write the word emerging. And then at the last third, I want you to write the word blighted. Blighted or disadvantage. Anywhere you go in the United States, it could be Atlanta, it could be Dallas, Fort Worth, St. Louis, Fayetteville, North Carolina. It could be Denver, San Francisco. Anywhere you go, in any metropolitan area you go to, you can take this circle and you can divide that metropolitan area in the same way. In that metropolitan area, wherever you go, there's a third of that area where it's a prospering area. In other words, that's where all the good jobs are. That's when new projects and new developments and new businesses are coming to that area. That's the area where they're going. Then there's a second third of the area where it's an emerging area. It's not as nice as the first third, but there are a lot of new and exciting things happening where it's emerging, and it's becoming the new place to go, the new place to live, the new place to look for a job, the new place to go shopping. And then you had that bottom third, the blighted or the disadvantaged area or wherever you are. That's the area you stay away from. That's the area where there's this perception, where there's a lot of crime, and where there's a lot of negative characteristics about that third of the area. And that's true wherever you go. So just think about different cities that you've gone to, whether it's Charlotte, North Carolina, or Detroit, Michigan, or it could be any small town America. you can divide those areas into those 3/3. And so here in Georgia, here's what happens. Let's talk about how community improvement districts came about. So regardless if you have a city council or a board of commissioners, every year those bodies, they create a budget. The city council and the board of commissioners, they create a budget, and that budget shows how the tax revenues, because remember, when you have a city council or when you have a board of commissioners, the budget that they're working with are the tax revenues that municipality or that entity has received. And so they come up with a budget of where those revenues are going to be invested. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but a city or a county they are incorporated, just like a business. They are incorporated. So in fact, a city and a county is doing business. And like any other business, that city or that county is trying to be successful. And these cities and counties all across America, they are competing. They're competing for jobs. They're competing for projects. They're competing for events. You all know the process that we go through to select where the Super Bowl is going, right? Well, all these cities, what they do, they put together this fantastic presentation, and they go to the leaders of the NFL, and they say, we want the next Super Bowl to be in our city, and here's why. And they start showing you what's going on in that city. And just recently, Atlanta was awarded a future Super Bowl. So because they're competing, because these major events, sporting events, conventions, conferences, they bring a lot of people to that city. And when those people come, they have to stay in a hotel, they eat in restaurants, they patronize the businesses, and they get involved in some other extracurricular activities. They're spending money, and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars. And so when a city is trying to win a future business that is saying, we're going to create 500 jobs, we're going to create 1,500 jobs. Well, these cities are trying to win that business. Bring those jobs to our city. Or you got this project where they said, we want to build a Hall of Fame of some sort, whether it's a music Hall of Fame or a sports Hall of Fame. And this Hall of Fame is going to cost $50 million to build, and it's going to have 3 million visitors every year. Cities are competing to win that project. And so when a city competes, look at your circle. Which part of that circle do you think they're telling people about? The first third, the prospering third, or the emerging third? Do you think they're showing that last third of that city? No. And so what happens year after year after year, these city councils and these board of commissioners, when they organize their budget, they are investing that revenue to make sure that prospering third remains that way. And then they allocate the budget to the emerging third to make sure that it continues on that upward track. And then what happens, they're out of money. And when they're out of money, that bottom third, they don't get new roads, they don't get sidewalks, their rec centers don't get repaired, and whatever has been going on in that bottom third, it continues. And then the next year comes, and that city or that county does the exact same thing. And then all of a sudden you have groups that will rise up and who live in that bottom third, and they would come to that city, that county board meeting or council meeting, and they would stump their feet, and they would come in with signs, and they all wear the same colored shirts, and they want money invested in their area because they live in that bottom third. And they get promises from elected officials, and those elected officials don't deliver. And so they repeat the same thing over again with that budget. And then a year or two in the future, when that has happened year after year after year, all of a sudden you get this community activist person who challenges their representative, and they run for office, and they end up winning because they got the people's support. And they ran on the promise, I'm going to turn this bottom third around. And then they go to their first council meeting, and they go to their first Board of Commissioners meeting, and there's Google who's put out this proposal of building a $1 billion project. And they list what they're looking for where they want to build this project. And so then that city goes, well, we need to make our prospering area better so that we can win that Google project. And every city that they sent that proposal to is doing the same thing. And that new council person who got elected to help that blighted area, how many jobs would that bring? 3,000 jobs. Oh, 3,000 jobs. Well, my people, they can get in their car and they can drive to wherever that's going to be in that prosper. And they vote along with the rest of them because why? They want to win that project. Because if they put the money in that bottom third, they run out of money and they can't keep the prospering area and the emerging area going in the same direction. So it's not necessarily, it's a technicality. They don't break their promises. They just see what's going on for real, and they want to keep it going on. Because if you don't invest in the prospering area and the emerging area, then what's happened, they're going to start going down, and you're going to start losing out when you're competing for those projects and for those jobs. So what I just described to you is what happened in America prior to the 1980s for the past 100, 150 years. That's how things were done. And so you had some property owners in the early 80s saying, well, how do we help this blighted area? What is it that we can do? And so this concept of a community improvement district came to the table. And here's how the concept works. If you go to a particular area, take that bottom third, and you identify all the commercial and industrial property owners in that area, and you get them to agree to pay more taxes, and form a community improvement district, then that money, that extra tax that they're paying, what the county has agreed to do because they just passed legislation to allow for the creation of community improvement district, they said, when we collect your taxes, that extra tax that you agreed to pay, we'll send it right back to you and you can do with it whatever you want. And so this concept, a community improvement district, came about. So now the effort is really helping the property owners in that blighted area to understand, here's an opportunity for us to take matters in our own hands, get access to public dollars, tax revenues, and invest those revenues in projects that's going to turn our area around. So that started back in 1985. Now I'm going to tell you something next that's not going to be a coincidence. The very first community improvement district was formed in the Cumberland Mall area. Does everyone know where Cumberland Mall is located? What's been built in the Cumberland Mall area? That CID was formed in 1988. In 1988, every year, that community improvement district has been collecting about $5 million extra above what they were already paying in taxes. And those property owners now by law can take that $5 million and they can invest it in a way to revitalize and redevelop the area where the CID is located. That's the concept of a CID. And so since 1988, in the Cumberland area, they have collected right at $100 million. The new development that has taken place in the Cumberland Mall area has exceeded $1 billion. So they put in $100 million, and then $1 billion worth of new development has taken place. And so when the Atlanta Braves started looking around the metro area for where they wanted to go and build their new stadium, that Cumberland Mall area was prepared and ready for that project to come to them. And so all of a sudden, you had these CIDs popping up all around the metro area. So as you look at this map and you look at the various colors, you see the Cumberland area They're kind of in the center, right in Cobb County. But then there are CIDs in each one of these counties, Cobb County, Fulton County, Gwinnett County, DeKalb County. And then all that happened since 1988. But if you put a pencil on Interstate 20, you will notice that most of the CIDs took place in the north. Go back to your circle. What's going on in your circle? What's happening in the north? Prospering and emerging. So even this new concept came on top of what the counties and the cities were doing to help those prospering and emerging communities. And so just in the last five years, below I-20, south of I-20, in Fulton County, you've had 3 CIDs come online. The first CID was formed in South Fulton, CID right there at the bottom. The next CID was formed off of I-20 over near Fulton Industrial. That's the Boulevard CID. And then just 2 years ago, you had Airport West CID was formed off of Kemp Creek Parkway right around the airport. And then just 1 year ago, you had the Airport South CID that was formed on the other side of the airport in Clayton County. When those 2 CIDs were formed, the leaders of those community improvement districts said, you know, we could probably do a whole lot better working together. And that birthed the Aerotropolis, Atlanta Community Improvement District. Now, the reason Aerotropolis, Atlanta was formed, there was another movement that was going on. And it was called the Aerotropolis Atlanta Alliance. And the alliance consists of 2 counties, Fulton County and Clayton County, and it consisted of 10 cities in those 2 counties around the airport. East Point, College Park, Hapeville, Union City, Riverdale, of course Atlanta, and 4 more. That made up the alliance. And they came together for this reason. Around the airport, you have converging those 2 counties and about 4 cities. And it made it very difficult over the years for development projects or any kind of projects to come into the airport area, because you had so many different entities that you had to work with and so many requirements with different entities that you had to satisfy. And that was very costly from a developer's perspective. And of course, you had that backlash where people didn't want anything to happen around the airport where they lived. And so the CIDs were formed, and this Aerotropolis concept had already taken place. Aerotropolis is simply a fancy word for airport city. So this concept of an Aerotropolis is creating a city around an airport. And what better place to do that than Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the world's most traveled airport. You have 105 million people using this airport annually. But as you travel around the world into other major cities and major airports, what you discover is in those airport areas, you see more development around the airports. And so we come back to Atlanta and we said, how can we make that happen in Atlanta? Well, there were 2 steps that were necessary to make that happen. Number one, there needed to be a unified voice in the airport area. And that's where the alliance came from. The alliance brought all those jurisdictions and municipalities to the same table, and they sat down and they recognized that they were in the same boat. And if we're going to redevelop this area, we can do it a whole lot better if we're working together. But then they said, we need a tool. We need a tool to make this happen, because we're falling more often, we're falling in that last third of that circle. What tool can we use? And somebody 6 years ago said, oh, look, there's this community improvement concept that's been used in other areas of Metro Atlanta and it's really working. How about we put 2 of those in place and see if they can help rejuvenate or revitalize the area around the Atlanta airport. And that's when the two CIDs came together, and the two CIDs said, well, let's join with the alliance and let's call ourselves Aerotropolis Atlanta. So that's how our name came about. And so now the objective is to create a destination. You know how when you're going somewhere, when you're going to a certain place, you've already done your internet research and you talked to family and friends and they told you places to visit and places to see. And they start naming places. Like when you go to New York, what are some popular places in New York? Times Square, and where else? Chinatown. What about in Brooklyn? What about in D.C.? What is a popular place to go in D.C.? Where? Georgetown area. Where else? What about if you go to Fort Worth, Texas? Does anybody know somewhere in Texas a popular place to go in Texas? Dooley Plaza. What about out in California? If you want to go visit California, San Francisco, LA, are there popular places that you've heard about that you want to go see? We wanted to do the same thing in Atlanta. So when people come to Atlanta, we wanted to give them another choice besides Buckhead, Midtown, Perimeter. We wanted them to come to Aerotropolis. And what is Aerotropolis? Well, in order to create this airport city, what is necessary, you have to have the infrastructure in place. The infrastructure being the road network. You have to make sure that it's a desirable destination. It's a place where people want to go. It's not the bottom third. You don't want people avoiding the area because they have the perception that it's not safe. So public safety is important. You want to make sure there's Wi-Fi there so that your cell phone works. Right? All that's important. That's infrastructure. You want to make sure that when people are going to work, that they don't get delayed because they're caught up in traffic. So it's important that you have systems in place, in addition to the road network, that will allow people to go from home to work, to school, to wherever. And so that's where the CID comes in place. The CID is focusing on the infrastructure that is necessary to be in place. And that infrastructure starts with understanding that it's important to have good public safety in place. So what we've done as a CID, we work with Clayton County, Fulton County, City of Atlanta, East Point, College Park, Hateville. Now we're getting ready to work with Forest Park. And every month in our office, we have a meeting with all the police chiefs or whoever they designate to come to this meeting. But there's a monthly meeting where we're talking about public safety in the airport area. What are the challenges? What's going on? What's keeping people away? What type of criminal activity is going on? And once those characteristics are identified, then there are plans that are being made to make sure that perception is changed so that it's an area that people want to go to. But along with the infrastructure and public safety, it is also necessary that you have an area that looks nice. So beautification is so very important in an area. Think about the places in Metro Atlanta where you like to go. When you drive along that street and you see trash along the ground, you see alcoholic beverages that were being used on the sidewalks. You see bags from fast food restaurants. You see trash and debris all on that street, and you need gas for your car. How many of you try to make it to the next street? Right? Because you perceive that this is not a safe area. Or what if you go to a restaurant? You've been out with your friends for a while, and you have one of those friends or some of those friends who they just always late. And then when you get to where you're going, they stayed longer than you were supposed to, and now you're hungry. And you want to go out to eat, and someone was telling you, you're out visiting, you're touring, and someone told you about this nice restaurant to go to, and you drive to this restaurant, and you get there. There are 2 or 3 cars in the parking lot. There are weeds all in the parking lot. The parking lot has cracks all over the place. The restaurant building hasn't been painted, it looks like in years. Just doesn't look nice. How many of you would go in that restaurant?
I heard the food is good.
Oh, I forgot to tell you one last thing. When you get out your car and you're walking up to the restaurant, you look on the ground, you see all these roach and rat boxes. And you don't just see one. It's like, it's 5 over. Oh, there's 5 over there. Do you still go in that restaurant? Because there's a perception. Now, you heard that the food was great in this place. But you're not going in, are you? Or the last one. You're coming down the interstate, and there's Papados located off of the exit. And you get to the exit, and the traffic is all the way back on the interstate, and you can't even get over. And you're hungry. Sometimes you just say, you know what, get over in the left lane. Let's keep going to the next exit and find another restaurant. Those type of things make you change your decision about what you were going to do. So beautification is very important. But the fourth component is wayfinding and signage. You know, I was just in D.C. recently, and somebody was telling me to go to a certain place, and I was walking down the street. I had no idea where I was going, and all of a sudden, there it was on a sign. And so I just kept following the sign, because I'm one of those guys, even though I had a 20-year IT career. I worked in IT for 20 years. I did projects in over 45 different states and over 12 different nations. And I couldn't figure out how to get that GPS walking thing working. But that sign, I just kept turning. Oh, I saw that sign, and it took me right to the building, and the place was closed. But the sign got me there because it's important. Wayfinding and signage is important. It changes the perception and the image of a place, and that's what we're all about with the Aerotropolis Atlanta CIDs, is making those changes. And here's what happens. Remember that description that I gave you earlier about how cities and counties create their budgets and where they're going to spend money. In that blighted area, there are 2 things that are missing. If you want to create an area as a destination, that area has to have a brand. That's where we came up with Aerotropolis Atlanta. Because now we want folks, in about 3 weeks, for about 9 days, I'm going to be in Beijing at an Aerotropolis conference. And I'm on a panel because they wanted to hear from Aerotropolis Atlanta, all the way over in China. Now, we're about 8 years away from what we're trying to do, but that name has already gone around the world. And we have people coming to us on a weekly basis now. This wasn't true a year ago, but now on a weekly basis, we have people coming to our office, coming to this area because they've heard about this concept of Aerotropolis Atlanta, and they want to be a part of it. Well, it took the Alliance and the CID taking a leadership position and saying to the elected officials, to the boards of commissioners of city council, taking a leadership position and saying, we're going to volunteer to pay more taxes by creating these CIDs, and we're going to invest this money in projects to revitalize this area. That's taking a leadership position. And what is taking place right now, we have all this new economic development taking activity. Now, for first time in a long time, we have the billion-dollar project being considered for the airport area. Right now, in the past 6 months, I've had presentations from developers and investors with a project at $30 million on the low end to $1 billion on the high end. And not just those 2, but anywhere from 10 to 15 different projects. Now they are looking at the Aerotropolis area to come and invest new hotels, new restaurants, new shops. They're even considering building office buildings. Right now in Atlanta, you know how you go downtown Atlanta and you go to those nice high rises where those office buildings are, and those offices are nice. And if you ever need legal assistance, you can go into a lawyer's office who's with a one room, and they can represent you just as well as the one downtown. You're just going to pay a $500 more an hour downtown than you would in East Point. But there's some good attorneys in East Point. But you go to those office buildings, those buildings are not around the airport. Now there were reasons for it years ago. You couldn't build in a flight path, and there were height restrictions. But now developers and investors have gotten creative, and they figured out not necessarily how to go vertical, but how to go horizontal and build. And they're considering that for the airport area. And so what our steps have done is we've given leadership to where they have created new economic development activity. Now in your folder, you have this handout, I believe. If you could take this out right quick. And you actually have two of these. Let me show you what I want you to take out. The two of them go together. You have one that looks like this, and you have a second one that looks like this. The one that's on the screen is this one, and then you have a second one. These two go together. So let's look. I want you to look at these two as I talk to you from this next slide. Here's an initiative that we have undertaken. What we've done is we created this circle, and inside this large circle, you will see 15 smaller circles. What those 15 smaller circles represent are all the interchanges around Hartsfield-Jackson. So if you're driving to the airport, or you're flying into the airport and you leave the airport, you're going to jump on the interstate system, and you're going to go through one or more of these interchanges. In Hapeville, there's a new city manager there. He's been there for about 1 year. He came from Orlando. What's in Orlando? Disney World, right? You know what he said? He said, in the world of airports, all around the world, we have the Disney World of airports right here at Hartsfield-Jackson. That's what he called it. We have the Disney World. Now, how many of you have been to Disney World? Now, when you go to Disney World, if this circle here in the middle is Disney World, when do you know you've gotten on the Disney World property? Way down here. All of a sudden, the side of the road start looking different. It looks like somebody is out here every day taking care of the side of the roads. Is that right? As you're driving into that. So what he said is, we need the area around the airport to look like you're coming to and from the Disney World of airports. So that's what this attempts to do. We have a plan over the next 4 years of transforming these 15 interchanges, and then between one small circle and the next, we call those segments. And there are 15 segments between one circle and the next. 15 interchanges, 15 circles. And here's what we're planning to do. On that second sheet, you see 4 large circles. And number 1, what's that first circle say? That's because I couldn't remember. Thank you for telling me. So in step number 1, we are working with Georgia Department of Transportation to clean up all 15 of these interchanges. Just go out there and clean them up. You know how much that's going to take? $1 million. Simply to go out there and trim the grass and pick up the trash. That's going to take $1 million. But before they do it, what the Georgia Department of Transportation needs, they need what's called a scope of work. They need someone to go out there and actually go to an interchange and figure out what needs to be done. That's called a scope of work. Well, nobody had any money to pay anybody to go do a scope of work. You know how much a scope of work costs for those 15 interchanges? $40,000. It costs $40,000 just to hire a landscape maintenance crew to go out there and document what it's going to take to clean it up. And so since nobody created a scope of work, nobody in the city or the county made that a line item in the budget. Why? Because they just spent all the money in the emerging area and the prospering area. So they didn't have $40,000 left. If they had $40,000 left, they could have done what the CID did. We told GDOT, Georgia Department of Transportation, we'll pay the $40,000. So the CIDs paid $40,000 and created a scope of work for all 15 interchanges and all 15 segments. And so when you see that number, isn't it 1.04? That 0.04 represents $40,000. The $1 million came from GDOT. It simply took us to pay $40,000 to get $1 million to clean up an area. That's the concept of a community improvement district. Because that had not gotten done. Think about this now, guys. Think about it. This is the Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. And nobody allocated $40,000 to go get $1 million to clean up the area. But the CID took its own money, and that's what we did. But now we're at step 2. How much does that one cost? $6 million. That's what she said. Now it's going to take $6 million to come up with a design of what we want it to look like. And then how much does that third circle cost? It's going to take us $50 million to build what's designed. So we need $60 million. I rounded it up. Those of you who take math. Because see, the 6 is bigger than the 5, so you round, okay. So I rounded up to $60 million. That's what it's going to take for us to design and build what we design. Now, if you look at those 4 circles, where did I do with that? Okay, there it is. I turned 50 on my last birthday, and you'll be amazed what you'll forget. Okay, phase 3, you see the picture below phase 3, that little box picture there where you see those cars running along the road? That's Camp Creek Parkway. Does anyone know what Camp Creek Parkway is? Georgia Department of Transportation is getting ready to convert Camp Creek Parkway. That's Interstate number 1 on your other map, on your other sheet. That's Interstate number 1. Georgia Department of Transportation is getting ready to convert that to a diversion diamond interchange, a DDI. You may see DDI. Go Google that. Go Google diversion diamond interchange, DDI. What that means, if you go to Ashford Dunwoody lately, or Jimmy Carter Boulevard or Pleasant Hill, when you cross the bridge, you cross it on the wrong side of the bridge. That's a solution to improve traffic flow through that interchange. What happens, the traditional bridge is when you're sitting there and you're waiting for the traffic signal to turn green. It turns green, but the cars that are turning left, they have blocked you so you can't even move. And in a lot of these interchanges in Atlanta, that signal turns green 3 times before you can actually take off. Okay, so what a diversion diamond interchange does, it moves the traffic to the other side of the bridge. So the traffic that's going left is on the other side of the bridge, and they can't block the ones that are going straight. That it improves the traffic flow, and the numbers so far show that the improvement is up to 40%, and on one interchange is as high as 60%. So that means that you have a 60% chance of taking off when that light turns green. That's pretty good, right? Guess how much it costs to convert that interchange to a diversion diamond interchange? $8 million. Then we're adding the CID, along with our partners, our cities and our counties, we're adding $2 million of enhancement. That's the beautification part. So Georgia Department of Transportation, all they're going to do is they just want to build a bridge. They're going to build a bridge, they're going to put up a fence, and they're going to say, keep off. But what we're going to do, we're going to give them $2 million, and we can say, make the bridge look pretty. Make it a gateway. So we did an art contest where 3 national artists, we paid them $5,000. We gave them a $5,000 stipend, and they came to us with an idea of what they can build at 2 of those interchanges, on 2 of those corners of that interchange. And the winning artist is going to build a sculpture, 2 sculptures, and they're going to cost $250,000 each, $500,000. What did I do with my tissue? Okay? So we're going to spend $2 million. We're going to have GDOT to put up an enhanced fence, a decorative fence. We're going to have GDOT to put up a decorative lighting. And on all 4 corners, we're going to re-landscape that whole interchange. So the new landscaping, the new fencing, the new lighting, and those 2 art pieces are going to cost $2 million. That's the design circle. So in each one of those interchanges on the other sheet, that's what we're going to do at all 14 of the other interchanges, and then we're going to come back and we're going to build it, and that's where the third circle comes from. But here's the problem. In the past, This has already been done around the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. You know when it was done?
1996.
1996. When the Olympics was coming to town, we went out around Hartsfield-Jackson and we spent about $30 million doing the same thing. Does it look like we spent $30 million around the Hartsfield-Jackson? You know why? Number four. It doesn't matter what you plant and how pretty it looks. If you don't take care of it, it's not going to look nice anymore. So what the CID has committed to do, if our partners will work with us and get 1, 2, and 3 done, we will find $1 million to help maintain the area. We've made a commitment of $1 million a year, but what we're going to actually do is go back to GDOT and say, we're here already, can you give us your money? And we'll take care of it. But if we weren't here, no one can make that ask, right? So now, why is all this important? Imagine 10 years in the future. 10 years in the future, you come out of the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta airport, and you are traveling through one of these 15 interchanges, and it looks like the way it looks in the prospering part of the metro area. What is your impression going to be? What is the Aerotropolis? And all of a sudden you go down the street and there are these nice high-rise office buildings. And then there's the entertainment district. And there are all these cool restaurants and hotels, all these different shops. Oh, and there are condos and apartments all around the Aerotropolis. You get the impression that this is a place to be. And if you're from out of town, especially, when people tell you that they're going to Atlanta, now you're not telling. Make sure you go through Buckhead, Midtown, Perimeter, Cumberland, but go to Aerotropolis. And not only for people who are out of town, but what the concept is going to do, it makes it feasible for jobs to relocate around the airport, so that now you can use, because and throughout Metro Atlanta, we need more transit. Anyone agree with that? We need more bus services and train services, right? A friend of mine came in town recently, and they got off the plane, and they said that MARTA system got stuck at every stop before I got to the baggage claim. I said, the MARTA system? They were talking about the plane train. But they called it the MARTA system because they had heard that the MARTA system was not good. So as soon as they got on the plane train and it stopped and delayed at every stop, concourse, they assumed that was MARTA. Well, there's a referendum coming up in November on the ballot in the city of Atlanta, and if it passes, it's going to raise $2.5 billion for MARTA to expand. As the next generation that's going to be going into the workplace, it is necessary for this region to make the sacrifice that it's going to take for us to create the transit system that is needed for you to move from home and work and learning and playing. If wherever you need to go, there's no reason why you can't take transit to get there. This Aerotropolis concept, in 2017, the CID is going to be we're going to be conducting a feasibility transit study. And we're going to look at this entire area, and we're going to ask the question, what transit solutions can help this area? And we've invited MARTA, Greta, those are the buses that pick you up from the park places and take you to the different destinations in Metro Atlanta. CERTA, those are the folks who manage the lanes, the HOT and HOV lanes on your interstate system. All the transit partners in the region, we've invited them to be part of this study to help us look at this area and figure out what solutions. And the solutions may not be anything that anyone's thought of today. And when that study happens, we're going to send invitations to Clayton State University, and we need you guys to participate in that study and help us figure out what the future is going to look like around the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport as it relates to transit. What type of technologies will you support? Because not only do you need help us to figure it out, we need your help paying for it. So we need you to graduate from Clayton State University, get you a good job, and pay your taxes. Did I just say that? Okay, I have 50 minutes. Okay. I'm going to close with this. Everything that I told you, that's what we're getting ready to do. That's what we hope to do over the next 8 years. We have a 10-year plan. We're in year number 2. That's what we hope to happen. But this slide, if you look in your packet, you should have this slide. This shows you what we're already doing. I'm going to close with this, and then we can open the floor for questions. In the first 2 years, the first 2 blocks are the one that says 600,000 and the 500,000. What the CID is doing today is that we're spending $600,000 a year in a public safety program where we are hiring private security companies, a private security company and off-duty police officers to patrol the entire CID district. So we added this additional layer of public safety. I got a text on my way here today from my public safety director, and he told me on Camp Creek Parkway that we caught a car with 4 or 5 passengers that had been stolen from another area. And we called them on Camp Creek Parkway. And it was our officer that we are paying who caught the car, called Atlanta Police Department because it was in the Atlanta city, and we caught that guy. We caught that car. That wasn't happening 2 years ago. And so that additional $600,000 is to make it safer, to $500,000 to make it beautiful. We spend $500,000, and we have hired a landscape maintenance company to come out every week in every street in our district. The map in the background, every street is being mowed in the right of way, and we're picking up trash every single week on every street, costing us $500,000. That's over and above what the county does and what the cities do. We spend that money. We have already won these projects. I told you about the $10 million for the Diverging Diamond. We received $20 million, $8.6 million on other projects. This is money that they have in their budgets, but they were going where? To the prospering area and to the emerging area. And now we have succeeded in getting that money coming to this area to make these investments. That's what we've already accomplished in 2 years. It has set a good foundation for us to build upon. So this concept, it seems to have gotten off on the right track, and it seems to be working. But like everything else in life, it's an experiment. And I hope we are successful in this laboratory that we call the Community Improvement District, and we certainly will need your assistance to make that happen. I think that's going to be the end of my presentation, and we'll open the floor for some questions if you have any. Look at that.
Something else. All right, we're going to do drawing. Oh, where you guys going? You guys got a class? All right, forfeit your ticket. Here we got a mug here, College of Business, number 471. 471. All right, let's do a question. Who has a question on the floor?
Yes.
Yeah, so my question is, now for homeowners that live in Clayton County, East Point, and these areas, could we assume that the home values will go up
Absolutely.
over 8 to 10 years?
Absolutely. The home values are going to go up in the next year, in the very next year. When you make these types of investments that are being made in the infrastructure, it increases home values. So yes, home values are going to increase as a result of this focus on infrastructure.
Okay.
Another question? Yes, sir.
So with that increase in home values, what about property taxes?
Well, if your home value goes up, your property taxes are probably going to go up. They're probably going to go. It depends on what the Board of Commissioners said as the millage for that particular year, but they're probably going to go up. But by us being here and working together as the Alliance and the CID, as you pay more taxes, we want to keep more of those tax dollars here and make sure that they get invested in this area. So as property values go up and you pay more taxes, that gives us more to invest in the local community, and it just kind of snowballs. Another question. The guy behind you.
And this kind of goes with that. You said it would be commercial and residential. Will there be anything in place for it to be affordable for people to live in that area?
Great
Or
question.
would it be like sky high, like
Great question. Yes, as part of the alliance, not part of the CID, but as part of the Aerotropolis Atlanta Alliance, the reason that everyone was brought to the table is that so that we can have those conversations. We want to make sure that no one is displaced, that as these improvements and revitalization projects take place, that affordability is part of that plan, that you create affordable homes, and you create affordable living spaces, shared spaces, like, for example, temporary office and so forth. All of that is on the table. It has been discussed. We have partners who are coming to the table, not only the Alliance and the CID, but we have different agencies that you're very familiar with that have worked in other parts of Metro Atlanta. They're all working with us. We got the Federal Reserve here working with us. We have United Way here working with, I can name 10 or 15 different organizations that are here working with us to make sure that the plan that is put on the table works for everybody. And that's our objective. We want to make sure that the plan, sound like I'm running for office. Next question. Next question.
Wait, number 517. All right, go ahead.
Another question, please. Yes, gentlemen.
Back to my question again. So those increased property taxes for homeowners, that property tax increase is definitely going to go back into the CID?
Only if it's commercial or industrial. The only two property types that pay into the CID are commercial properties and industrial properties and office space. I forgot it. Commercial, industrial, and office. So residential, that does not come into the CID. It goes to the local city or it goes to the county. And so here's your interest. You want to get involved and you want to prepare yourself. I like to tell my kids, pay attention to what's going on. Do your research. Go to Google. Maybe y'all use something else. I'm 50. I use Google. And go there. Okay, we'll see y'all tomorrow.
I didn't do you, Mike.
Are we off? Can y'all hear me? Follow the leader. You remember you were small when you played that game, Follow the Leader? If you want to figure out how to prepare yourselves and be part of what's happening in Metro Atlanta, pay attention to what the plans are. Read the Atlanta Business Chronicle every Friday. Make sure you read that publication online or in your school, wherever you can get access. Make sure you read that publication. Make sure you're reading business-oriented magazines. Pay attention to what's going on so you can see what the 1-year plan, the 5-year plan, the 10-year plans are. In some cases, there are 20 and 40-year plans. There's a 2040 plan for Metro Atlanta. Have you heard of that plan? There's a 2040 plan. And what that 2040 plan says is by 2040, there are 2.5 million people moving to Atlanta. And so if you're not prepared for what these plans are going to create, you're not going to be able to participate. So in order to get yourselves ready and prepared for the future that's going to happen in Metro Atlanta, pay attention to what the plans are and prepare yourselves accordingly. You know, if there's a new football franchise coming to town and you like to play football, you can't just show up on the field and say, I like to play football. You got to prepare yourself. And you got to go so that you can go and try out and hopefully make the team. Any other questions? Yeah. There's one young lady here and one back there. Yes.
Design question. I've noticed some communities have installed roundabouts.
Yes.
Is that for trafficking or is it just for, what is the roundabout?
The primary purpose of a roundabout is it eliminates conflicts. You know, when you come to a four-way stop, you know, some people they passed the driving test, but they were doing a lot of guessing. And so they don't know how to take their turn, or you just have some people anyway, the roundabout eliminates those conflicts. And so it creates an intersection that makes it easier for traffic to flow through and it doesn't cause backup into another road. There was a young lady.
Number 558 is the last one.
558. Who has 558?
All right, stay there. I'll bring it up.
Yes, ma'am. You have a question?
Okay, what about 540, Dr. Ham?
So what?
What about 540?
What about it? We still in the bag, Clay.
Yes, another question.
So contrasting the development in, say, Cumberland Mall area and Ponce City Market, for example, will there be any emphasis on locally owned businesses versus just
Great question. That kind of goes back to affordability. We work with the business merchant associations in Clayton County and Fulton County in the South Metro area because we want to make sure that whatever the plans are, that the small business owner is a part of that plan. Absolutely. And so one of the things that is happening, there's a new project that's on the table I can't tell you about, but it's exciting. But it actually brings those small businesses to the table, and it showcases those businesses to the rest of the world. So imagine all these 60 million people coming to Atlanta who is not leaving the airport. Do y'all know that? Out of the 105 million, 60 million of them don't leave the airport. And then all of a sudden there's this new project that is showcasing all these local businesses and products that are produced here in Georgia and Metro Atlanta. Hopefully they'll go out there and patronize them. So yes, small businesses, and again, we work with the chambers, we work with Business Merchants Association. Yes, a question here.
I just had a question, since you're working with multiple counties. If I'm in Clayton County, you said the CID gets their money from commercial, so where I live in Clayton, I'm in Ellenwood. So say we have Walmart there, they're just trying to build. So are those, is that part of the county, all Clayton County paying into this, or just the part that's near the airport paying into it? How does that?
Great question. So when you look at that map where I show you what we've already accomplished, that map shows you the CID district, only those commercial properties and industrial properties inside of the CID pay. Now here's how it benefits the rest of the county. You saw on that sheet where we have, what, $20 million project coming, a $10 million project coming, an $8 million. Those are projects that now are going to be done in Clayton County that Clayton County does not have to pay for. So now Clayton County can take their money and put it somewhere else. See, that's how we equalize that circle. Now we've created this new money for that blighted area. So now the money that was normally being spent elsewhere can be spread throughout the whole areas. And that's kind of how it works. We secure funding that was not normally going to come to this area, and then it helps the county and the city in this area to spend money elsewhere. When we put our police on a street, the police from the other departments, they can go to another street and not have to stay on our street because our guy is there. You see how that works? So it supplements what's already happening. For you guys, as you're preparing yourselves, I want to go back to paying attention. It's not hard to figure out. It's really, if you just read those publications that I talked about, keep yourselves plugged in. My daughter is 22. She just graduated from another college. I won't call the name of it, downtown Atlanta, getting ready to buy Turnerfield. And that's where she graduated from. She's 22. She's a political science major. And I forgot what I was going to tell you. Okay. Pay attention. Yeah, that's what I tell her all the time. Pay attention. And that way you won't forget what you're going to say. But she graduated from Georgia State. And what was so important while she was in school, she watched, I remember, she watched C-SPAN. She was a political science major. Every day she watched C-SPAN. And she had conversations with me about what was going on around the world as far as politics and policy. If you're a business major, watch some popular TV shows on TV right now. Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder and Grey's Anatomy. That's Thursday night, right? How do I know that? Don't watch those shows. Watch the Business Channel. Pay attention. You can't pay attention watching Scandal. Watch all those networks that's talking about business and what's happening in economic development. And then you can see the trend. And all of a sudden, you're going to see, well, a class that you need to take next is important because you just saw it on the Business Channel or on the Business Chronicle. And then most of these plans are 5 years in the future. There's not things that they're going to build tomorrow. It's stuff that's going to be built in 5 years. So you are in the right place at the right time to get yourselves ready for what's going to happen in next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. But you can't make the right decision about how to prepare yourselves if you're not paying attention, if you're not watching the right stuff.
How can they get involved?
I told you about the study, right? I told you about the study. Developers and investors need to hear from you. So when there are opportunities for you to go to a council meeting, a board of commissioners meeting, a city council meeting, even a PTA meeting, all these different types of meetings are important. Just because you're in college doesn't mean that you're not part of society. They're trying to figure out what that 5-year and 10-year plan is going to be that you're going to buy. And if you go to these meetings and you put yourselves out there, you could potentially put yourself in front of a new future employer when you go to these various meetings. So go to those meetings. If you follow the Clayton Chamber of Commerce or the South Fulton Chamber of Commerce, and pay attention, go to their website and look at events that are held at GICC and all around this area. I don't know where y'all live. Y'all live in Metro Atlanta, but just find events to go to. I'm not talking about ludicrous. I'm talking about events. Okay. But put yourselves out there outside of the classroom so that when you come back inside the classroom and stuff is presented to you, it's going to make better sense. And you're going to see how if you're on the right track or if you need to make some adjustments and get on a different track. So put yourselves, participate in these meetings. There are opportunities for you to volunteer and to participate in studies. Our Dr. Tim, that we affectionately call Dr. Tim, we'll be sending stuff to Clayton State to say, hey, get this information out to your students. When you see that stuff announced, go to those things. And don't see yourself just as students and you're just in this incubator and you're isolated from the rest of the world. The rest of the world is trying to figure out what y'all want in 5 years and what jobs to create and make available for you in 5 years.
What about the CID? How can they help you?
With the CID, the most important thing for the CID is that anytime we have an event or an activity, is to, like, for example, on October 27th, put this on your calendar. On October 27th, we're having an open house at the Georgia International Convention Center from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's a presentation that's going to take place at 6 p.m., but from 4 to 7, you can just come there into this room, and we're going to have display boards all around the room that's showing you what our plans are. We need to hear from you. We need for you to come to one of those boards and tell us what you think about that project. If you think it's a great project, ask a question if you don't understand what the project is, but participate in these different activities. So that's our next event. You can go to our website and put your name and email in that box on the home page, and then you'll start receiving our e-newsletter about these different events. But come and give us your input from your perspective. And then as you give us your input from your perspective, you help us to help you. Help us make plans to make things better in the South Metro area.